Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and a continuing series, the Unported Playlist, where we take a look at some of my favorite unported arcade games of all time. And today we're taking a look at Operation G.H.O.S.T, maybe the last pure arcade Lightgun experience from Sega outside of the House of the Dead Scarlet Dawn. Since we're just jumping right into the action, like, subscribe, and all that jazz, let's just talk about the game. Now, if you know me and you know the channel, you know I love two things: a great Lightgun arcade game and a great Sega arcade game. Put the two together and I'm a very, very happy boy. And Operation G.H.O.S.T is exactly what's happening here. It is all the intense, fun, Lightgun arcade action I would expect out of Sega, and it just doesn't involve shooting the undead, because I love the House of the Dead, but it is fun to have a second type of series from Sega. Now, this is technically the third game in the Ghost Squad franchise. You have Ghost Squad and Ghost Squad Evolution available for the arcade, and the original Ghost Squad did come over to the Nintendo Wii as well. So considering Sega's track record with porting arcade games to home consoles, 33% is not a bad number whatsoever, because usually it's kind of like 0. But into the actual gameplay of Operation G.H.O.S.T itself, if you ever played a Lightgun game, you 100% know what's going to happen, but I love just how often this game actually changes itself up, because you have different types of gameplay styles, including this sniper section, and I know I pulled the trigger with that reticle over the opponent. Sometimes the game's just going to give you hell and you're going to miss. But right after that, we go to a Gatling gun section on the top of a helicopter as the camera just flies around. I love what the camera does in this game. It's constantly on the move, it's constantly showing you something new, and it's constantly putting the action in a visual perspective. It's not just that there's a lot of guys on screen at once that you need to shoot, it's that the camera is constantly pivoting and rocking around to the point where they are doing visual storytelling of that action as you play the game. So in that respect, it does such a great job, but I just love this series because it really feels like the extension of Virtua Cop. We had Virtua Cop 1, 2, and then 3, but that series hasn't really made much of a comeback, but it seems like Operation G.H.O.S.T and the rest of the Ghost Squad games kind of continue along what Virtua Cop was doing. As opposed to being a cop, though, you're just part of the military, but honestly, aren't they two sides of the same coin? And I will say the boss battles are really well scripted, and I do love that they give you just enough time to hit that cancel zone, but it is very tight. You're probably going to get like 3 out of 4 when you first start, but once you learn the patterns and come back to play the game time and time again, getting to a 1 credit clear wouldn't be the hardest thing, at least for the first few stages. But I will say this game gets progressively harder, and the final stage might be cheap to the point where you'd really have to take a lot of time to get that 1cc. But now that we have finally defeated that boss, he's going to jump on a ladder on a helicopter, and if that is not an action movie trope, I do not know what is. It's in so many different movies. But moving on to the second level, I love that they just use the SWAT team tactics of using that rope and crashing right through the window. Another very Hollywood cinematic trope, and I feel like this game really does hinge on a lot of things you would see in 80s action movies or television shows. But the core mechanic, the shooting, it is just great. It's everything you want. If a Lightgun game doesn't have good shooting mechanics, then it doesn't matter how pretty it is or how intriguing the storyline is, it's not going to be a fun experience. And I do love all the different actions you can use as well. You can command your squad, you can have them throw flashbangs, you can have them throw grenades, or even move into different areas. So it does give you a little bit of a tactical feel to it. It's like a very, very light sort of Ghost Recon feel, or something like Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, except in a on-rails Lightgun shooter from Sega. And you do get different sections as well, like you're going to get here a night vision mode. It just gives you a little something different to look at. And the game does start to slightly slow down to give you more target practice without having 10 enemies on screen at once. But you will see that some enemies have timers on them. If there's a timer and they're flashing red, that's how many seconds you have until you need to shoot them, or they're going to shoot you. And as you get into later stages, they're just going to pop up with one over their head. And if you're not perfect, there's going to be situations in which you're just definitely going to have to take that damage. Now, I don't know much about night vision technology, but I'm pretty sure you don't want to throw a flashbang while wearing it. It amplifies ambient light, and what is a lot of ambient light but a flashbang? But if you do know anything about that, leave me a comment down below and tell me if my suspicions are correct, because I don't think I would elect to wear night vision goggles when a flashbang went off. But honestly, outside of that little fun quirk, it's just such a great game, and I love all the stylistic choices they made. And I will say that the soundtrack has a nice vibe to it as well, and all the gunshot sound effects are great. So go ahead and listen to the game for like 45 seconds, and I'll come back and talk more about Operation G.H.O.S.T, its history, and the rest of the game. Enjoy!
Alpha will get the hostages! Take out the enemy! Bravo!
Reloading. Reloading.
That is a very bass guitar heavy soundtrack, but it does work for the game, and of course once the bullets start flying you're not really going to be able to hear much of it at all. And that is the unfortunate part of pretty much every light gun game, is you get such rapid succession of the gunshot sound effect that whatever soundtrack is underneath it's going to be really hard to hear, but you did get a little bit in there before the fight actually went on. But I just love how often this game pivots itself up. Basically every level has the same structure with slight variations. You're just going to be shooting bad guys, but then some story is going to come in, you're going to see what's happening next, and you're going to transition to either Bravo or Charlie team. Charlie's going to be the sniping squad here, and now the game is going to give you an X amount of enemies to hit, and you need to clear them all within that time frame. 9 enemies, 25 seconds. It's not the shortest time, it's not the longest time, it gives you just enough suspense, but these enemies are definitely going to move around, and they're going to try to hide behind those metal bars on that walkway there. They are not dumb, and Sega did make it hard to get all of them at once, so you really have to kind of monitor where they're going, and once you get down to 3, you're going to see that they do start to move back and forth, so you have to kind of see what their cadence is and better understand where they're going and where they're going to stop. Because if you shoot while they're moving, you're basically guaranteed to miss them. But that was a success, and we can move on with the rest of this level. I would say that if there's one complaint I would make about Operation G.H.O.S.T. is that some of the levels are absolutely incredible, and other ones are just fine. Like this level right here, absolutely love it. It's got a great boss battle. As you get a little further into the game, I would say the back third actually lags a little bit compared to what the first 2/3 of the game are doing. And I love this boss here with that giant hit me shield with what looks like a woman over a giant bullet. It's a little hard to tell, and now that I've shot it up a bunch, you can kind of see it. But it's just one of those strange things that one of the developers decided to put in there. But pretty much every boss battle has at least 2 stages. Now that we've taken that shield down from him, he is going to go to a rocket launcher inside of a room. Probably a really ill-advised thing, and I don't know how those 2 squad members did not just get blown up, but it seems like the laws of physics and explosives don't exactly adhere to reality in Operation G.H.O.S.T. But because we do have that command button on the firearm, we're able to move out of the way, and you're going to get situations where you have to quick react with that button or else you're going to take a hit. But we knocked that enemy down, he exploded, but don't worry, we're going to capture all these people, and they're just randomly going to come back later in the game before you hit the final boss with absolutely no explanation as to how they escaped from our captivity. It's a little bit of a story miss, but honestly, critiquing a story in an arcade game, not really worth the time. But let's move on to this oil tanker here, at least what I presume is an oil tanker. Really not sure about ships. Leave me a comment down below if you know an absurd amount of ships, and I would be curious to see if I was right. But it's just another great level, and now that we've gotten to the middle of the game, things are getting a lot more heated up. A lot of the enemies that are going to pop out are going to have those numbers over their head, and you're going to have to be on your toes because you want to knock them out first. If you see these standard enemies aiming for you, they're basically Stormtrooper level of being able to hit stuff. But now that we get to this Gatling gun section, I would say that the soundtrack in this area is amazing as well. Let's go ahead and listen for like 25 seconds this time, and I'll be right back.
Watch those corners! Use your CQB train!
Reloading.
03 and 04, you take the ball!
Reloading.
Grenade!
The musicians at Sega were just into bass guitar when they made this game, but it really does work for the overall cadence of the action. That bass line kind of gives you a beat in which to play by, and the intensity is there, but the game is nice and it will ease up when you feel like you've been shooting too many things and either give you a boss battle or a little bit of a story. But of course it's Sega, so that story is going to make no sense. I do not know who drives around on the deck of a ship in a Hummer to try to beat people, but that's what happens in this game. This dude's just going to keep doing donuts around the deck, trying to shoot at us when we need to avoid him and shoot for that cancel. It doesn't make any sense, but I love it. And that's the great thing about Sega arcade games. Generally, they don't make any sense. Generally, they're kind of wonky in the story department and especially the voice acting, but you can't help but have fun when you play it. And of course, it's a multi-stage boss battle, and we're going to jump into our own vehicle so we too can run donuts around this deck. It doesn't seem like it would be any more effective than actually just standing there and shooting. In some ways, it seems like it would be harder to maneuver, but then again, I'm not a military tactician, so maybe this is the prescribed methodology of fighting a Hummer on a ship. Leave me a comment down below if you served in the military. Is this what happens? I would assume it's probably what you guys do every day of the week and twice on Sundays. But we did manage to get the next boss down, and we get to move on to the next area in the game, and I'm going to say it is my absolute favorite. This is the classic super red Southwestern or Mexico movie vibe, except with the military. This is just always a trope in this area. When you're in the desert, suddenly the light becomes orange all the time, which is not in any way, shape, or form how real life or eyes work, but in entertainment, video games, movies, and television, it's always what they do. But I love a vehicle section in a light gun game, gunning down these dudes on dirt bikes, shooting these Hummers and these Baja all-terrain vehicles. It just really works, and it's nice just to be able to play the game and not worry about the levels. I mean, you're not commanding your squad, you're just getting a whole bunch of different looks. But Sega was smart. The final boss in the game, you have one chance to shoot him down with a rocket, and it teaches you how to use the lock-on mechanic before you get to him. Now, I'm not going to say it's easy to lock onto that last boss. It moves around like crazy, but the game does teach you techniques you're going to need to see the ending and to see the best ending of it. But just when you're done with shooting dudes on dirt bikes and Hummers, you get this whole helicopter chase sequence, and it just 100% absolutely works. And the cutscenes, I would say, are great as well. In some ways, this feels long enough and story-driven enough that maybe it was intended for a home console port. I could 100% see something like this on the PlayStation 3 with the Move controllers, like how we got House of the Dead 4 only on PlayStation 3 and in arcades. But of course, as of the making of this video, this is an unported arcade game, and it'll probably stay that way because I'm sure by now it would need too many enhancements to be able to be released for a home port. But it's not a Lightgun military shooting game if you don't have at least one boss battle with either a helicopter or a person hanging out of the side of the helicopter. And Operation G.H.O.S.T is no different. It's going to give you that helicopter that you need to shoot down to get to the next area. And the one miss, I think, in this entire game is that it says we need to shoot the tires out to stop the trailer. That should have been a sniper section, not a cutscene, and maybe it was supposed to be and they ran out of time. I want a sniper on a helicopter while that reticle waves back and forth because you're flying through the air, and I want you to have like 2 or 3 shots to take the tire out before the truck gets away. I really wish they had done that. But now we're on to the final mission in the game. It starts off so strong with this rappelling sequence, and I love that the camera flips itself 100% upside down. Unfortunately, once you actually get to the ground, I would say that the final mission until the boss battle is the most boring in the game. Not to say that it's not fun, but everything that came before this was more dynamic, more unique, and more fun to look at because now we just have generic tunnels and a military installation. And I get it, I'm pretty sure all military installations probably look the same. Their design aesthetic is not that big, it's function over form, but I do wish that it wasn't this drab and just enemies popping up behind trucks and barrels. But honestly, the voice acting, 10 out of 10 amazing. Listen for 20 seconds and I'll be right back.
Yes.
You've really got out of your way to meddle in our business.
This is your last chance to surrender this facility.
Why would we do that when this place makes us rich?
What the?
You're not here to have a chat, are you? Well, I'm ready now.
I mean, hey, compared to House of the Dead Scarlet Dawn, that is Academy Award winning voice acting right there. But this is a multi-stage boss battle, and I love that the first stage is just this dude kind of dancing around and doing somersaults with a gun cane. And he takes probably like 75 to 100 bullets to him, and that just basically puts him into a second phase. Now I know I shouldn't critique video games as far as realism is concerned, but how many bullets can a boss take before they actually die? Because that guy just got shot through wearing a suit and nothing else like 100 times. Maybe he has that same bulletproof duster that the first boss had, but they never mention it. It always just kind of strikes me as funny when I play this game that he just takes that many bullets. But his second phase is absolutely outstanding. You have all these different drones flying around with these different cancel timers on them, and the boss is going to pop up as well with his own cancel timer. You have to deal with so much on screen. It 100% works. Now I will say if you have a second player playing at the same time, it's going to be a lot easier because each of you can take half of the screen, but honestly it's relatively well balanced for a first player game as well. But now we finally got through his second phase, and now suddenly all of that gas that he was wearing the mask for affects us. Apparently the only time that gas is toxic is when the boss is hobbled, and then it magically works. Before that we were running around in it and shooting it, and it didn't matter whatsoever. But this is the one thing I hate about arcade games. When they do this, it drives me nuts. You get one chance to target his helicopter. If you hit it, it's amazing. If you miss it, the entire game has to be replayed to see the true ending. And I do really feel like I was locked on here. I was holding the reticle over. I was sitting there watching the timer go down, but unfortunately, it just didn't happen for me. I missed. We'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.